Hello and welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Daz. I've got Steve with me. Before I introduce our special guest for today, quick competition time. Gonna have a competition in about a week. I know I've been going on about it for like a month, but it'll be well worth it. Got 3 books that we're gonna give out. One is from our 2 mates, Kieran Smith and Jeff Golden. It's The Untouchables, the Anfield's Band of Brothers. If you're just on audio, I'm actually just putting the book up now on our YouTube. But it's an absolutely amazing book. I'm going to make you work, though, to get this book. I'm not just going to give it to you. You got to actually do some research. Next one that we're giving away. This is actually a fantastic book as well. I'm halfway through it. I'm waiting to still find my name in the book. Red Letters, the 2 favourite Liverpool FC correspond through the epic season that would never end. That's Michael McCambridge and Neil Atkinson from the Anfield Rap. And last but not least, The Red Journey, an oral history of Liverpool Football Club by our mate from LFC TV, Mark Platt. So I'm going to make you work for all 3 of them. No easy giveaways on this show. There's a plaque too. And now I am very, very happy to introduce our special guest for today, David Fairclough. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, Daz. Thanks. Nice to speak to you and Steve. It's well, we tried to get this together last for a week or 2, so finally got there. So
it's always well worth it, worth the wait, though. You know, always great to meet one of my heroes. It's another one checked off on my list, which makes me well happy. I want to start with you because I know people all go straight into your goals and stuff. I always want to know, in the beginning as a young lad. From Liverpool, when did you start actually playing footy? Was your dad's like a football heavy into football, or
no? Well, my dad was a Liverpool fan, and I have a first memory of my dad going to Leyton Orient. It would have been 1960, 59-60. It was the promotion year from the 2nd Division. And that's the first memory that I have. I remember my mum saying that my dad had been down to Leyton Orient. In those days, he had people remember he had a motorbike and sidecar that went all the way down to London to see what was at the time a crucial fixture between Liverpool and Leyton Orient, and that's my first memory that my dad was kind of really into football. He had a season ticket for the Kempen Road stand from the first season it was built, and I have memories of him taking me to the reserve games prior to that on a Saturday and walking around Anfield as you could in those. Well, you could walk 3 sides around Anfield in those days. And then Kempen Road stand was built, and my dad, after being a standing spectator, turned to taking a season ticket in the Kempen Road stand. So as it was, so lots of early memories of football. I wouldn't say I never think of my dad being fanatic in the way that fanatic has become, but he was very, more than keen. And obviously, the sign of that must have been going down to London midweek to see Liverpool and Leyton Orient in those days.
Were you in the sidecar?
Unfortunately, not. No, not. I have. There are pictures of me in the sidecar with my mum and dad when we went on our first holidays all those years ago. He was a keen motorcyclist before, until he got a few £100 and he was able to buy a car. Progressed into a car. In fact, he actually had a Del Boy and Rodney 3-wheeler before he had a car. So if anybody remembers those. So I got a very normal, working class background. I grew up in a street that doesn't exist anymore, but it was Carmel Street off St. Domingo Road, which was only a few hundred yards away from Anfield. So life was all around football and the match, and people would walk up our street on their way to Anfield, and so the weekends were always, it was football throughout the week, but match days were a massive occasion around by where I lived.
And football wise for you, when did you start actually, playing?
Well, unfortunately, I did a book with Mark some years ago, and a few years ago, and a picture came to light after we'd gone to print, and I've got a nice picture of me in a romper suit kicking with my left foot. My mum reckons I must have been about 15, 16 months. So she said I kicking a ball was the first thing I ever did and never stopped.
Steve, I'm going to bring Steve in.
Hey, good morning, David. Thank you again for being here. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so David referenced the book that he wrote with Mark Platt, so I just want to show everybody Supersub. And I was looking at this book again, and I realized that I got this book in 2015. I met you at the Arkles. We had a pint. You signed this book.
Yeah.
And that was the very first home game for Jurgen Klopp. That was against Southampton. And so it just brought a lot of great memories. So it's good to see you again.
Yeah, great. Yeah, well, you know what? I remember that day in the Arkles. I didn't remember the day as Jurgen's first game. So, first home game. So that's a memory jogger for sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to, you guys were talking about youth growing up playing football there around your community. One of the things that I found interesting in the book is that just the way that how you advance through the schoolboys leagues, that are around Liverpool. Obviously everybody wants to be found by the clubs, but seems to be a pretty good structure on advancement on how you get to play. And it was interesting about all the different type of youth cups that are available to the players there.
Yeah, Liverpool as a city, as Darren would know, lives and breeds. You'll know yourself. Liverpool breeds football. It exists on football, and schoolboy football has always had a fantastic history in Liverpool. Certainly as long as the modern system exists. And their schoolboy teams, it was a fierce competition to get in, to be chosen to play in the top 11, 12 kids in the schoolboy teams was probably your first ambition as a kid. If you're growing up playing football, your ambition is to play for Liverpool schoolboys because they had such an incredible history and reputation. So I was put forward for the Liverpool under 11s, and coming from my school, I think my school previously had one kid who'd played for Liverpool under 11s. So it's a kind of a big deal, as they say, to get chosen, and that kind of puts you in a little bit of a window there, because in those days, to be picked up by the football clubs, it was done through a scouting system whereby you have these kind of mysterious fellows who are watching all kinds of football, making notes and making recommendations to the football clubs, and that's how I came more or less to the attention of Liverpool, and I advanced as well up the Liverpool schoolboy system. It's a great window of opportunity, and people sort of say it's. I did a little thing with Jimmy Case a week ago, and he talked about how he almost got into Liverpool schoolboys but didn't, and it's one of those things where if you miss out on it, you kind of feel as if one of those opportunities of becoming, of meeting your ambition, being a professional footballer, kind of goes. So you've got to kind of work again to get into the sort of the attention of scouts and things. So I was lucky. I was lucky very early into that sort of profile of young aspiring footballer.
You know, one of the interesting stories I remember in your book is that you're signed by Bill Shankly, but then by the time you got after the summer, he had retired and he wasn't there. So I wonder if you can give us some background on that.
Yeah, I was, as I was coming through the system, Shanks was very much the man in charge of Liverpool, and I signed apprentice in 1973, and apprentice forms is the sort of the stage pre-professional contract, and whereby, for those who perhaps aren't aware of it, you go into the club and the first things you do when you arrive at the club in the morning is clean boots and clean floors and, put out the kit for everybody. You're the kind of little servants around the place servicing the big stars. And that's your introduction into what potentially is ahead. I did that in 73. Well, in the years previous, you were able to leave school at 15 and a half in England. My school didn't allow me to leave school at 15 and a half because it was a grammar school. It was very academic, sort of styled. Sport for them wasn't the priority. So I wasn't able to take the opportunity to turn an apprentice at 15 and a half. Time apprentice at 16 and a half, 1973. And January 74, I signed professional in front of Bill Shankly. I don't know whether, again, I got a picture, I think, that came to me just after the publication of the autobiography, which is a shame, really, because it's a picture I carry around with me on my phone.
You can send it to us.
Yeah, of me and Shanks. I'll text you the picture, and somebody sent it on to me, and there's me signing for Shanks, and I was 17, a mop of long red hair, not the most flattering hair day, I have to say. But I got to know Shanks because a couple of years before, coming through the system, being introduced to it and everything, then obviously signing pro, you have these aspirations, breaking into Shanks' first team. But unfortunately, by the end of that summer, 74, Shanks retired. So didn't quite play as much football as I would have liked under him. I got to know him much better, though, after he retired. I lived very close to Shanks, and he was never, he was never invisible. He was always out there with the community and all that type of stuff. And I met him at many, many occasions after. So missed out, breaking into Bill Shankly's Liverpool first team. But I say, proud to say that, I was. Well, I'd like to say certainly I was a friend. I was a friend, acquaintance of the great Bill Shankly.
Just to kind of bring it up to speed, where your nickname is Supersub, that you got that nickname pretty early on, and just to refresh everybody's memories, the substitute weren't like they are today. Free substitutions and things like that. I think people tend to forget that, as a starter, you scored a goal almost every third game, so you had a pretty good track record as a starter. So I know that in your book, I remember I know there's this underlying, this could have been a lot better if I could have got more starts, but you had such a strong team.
Yeah, I mentioned there before, in those days, football was about the 11 and maybe the 12th man, that's all it was, substitutes introduced in the mid 60s. So there was only one substitute. So for you to be in the 11, 12 man group, when you look back on it, you think, well, that's an achievement alone, because the group that I was trying to break into included so many huge stars and characters: Tommy Smith, Emlyn Hughes, Ray Clements, Ian Callaghan, obviously, who was there forever, Kevin Keegan and Toshak. So to get into that group, and outside of that sort of a team, there were those. I played for the reserve team, and I played in one game, and I think I'm right in saying there were 9 internationals in the reserve team that day. There was only myself and a kid called Brian Kettle were the only 2 players who weren't international players. So it was a huge, there was more to Liverpool than the 12. So when you look back on it, and you think it was a good achievement just to get onto the bench. But once you've had that experience of being on the bench, playing one or two games, you have your own impression of how well you've done and what you should be sort of capable of doing. And once I'd played a few games, I had confidence and felt I should have played more. And when I look back on it, that is a little bit of a disappointment. I was listening to something on radio here yesterday, and they were talking to Jack Wilshere, and they talked about him having had injuries, and he said you can't automatically come in after an injury and be in top form. He said, so he used to need 5 or 6 games to get up to speed. At Liverpool, 5 or 6 games, you had like 5 or 6 minutes to get it up to speed, because you didn't, I was in the team, out the team, and I mean, I scored 3 on one Saturday against Norwich. I didn't play the next game. So, at Liverpool, the intensity of playing and now I think players are afforded much, much more time to acclimatise. You hear the argument, people need time to get used to a club's way of playing and all those things. And I look back now and think, in some ways, I'm a bit disappointed in a fashion, because that wasn't the way it was in the old days. You had to, if you got one chance, you had to really make that count on that day. If you didn't sort of perform, you weren't up to speed, you weren't scoring goals, all those things. There was no sort of leeway for you to say, well, the manager Paisley wouldn't turn around and say, well, we've got to give him another 3 or 4 games to break in. You had to do it, and you had to do it then. It was a tough upbringing. What can I say? I loved it. It was fantastic. But I do think at times, I look back and think, well, if only, and I could have done better. You mentioned, Steve, my goal scoring numbers were quite good, but I wasn't an out-and-out goal scorer as such. That's the way I was when I was a kid. But by the time I was playing sort of real professional football, I was playing more of a sort of like a bit like how Mane plays, and out wide, play in the middle, score goals and one thing or another. But I wasn't like an Ian Rush or a John Aldridge kind of player. Yet the numbers that goals I scored were quite credible. Really, they were quite good.
So
what? Go ahead.
I was going to say, so the nickname, obviously Supersub, was that really like an unwanted nickname for you?
Well, not really at the outset, Daz. Because I was making I made a couple of appearances for the team. For the team, I had 1 or 2 good moments. I think before I got called Supersub, I was called the Bionic Carrot, amongst other things. So the Supersub thing, I think they'd run out of adjectives in the first 3 or 4 weeks that I was sort of featuring in the team. And then the Supersub thing came out, and I think people liked it. It stuck. It's been used. I mean, it's used, I think. Gosh, it's unbelievable the sports that have used the terminology. Whether it's Formula One racing or girls basketball or netball, all these, like, Supersub now is in the vocabulary. And to think that it kind of began with what I was doing is it's really strange. And so in that, I have to take a lot of pride from the fact that it stuck. And down the years, I've had little kids come up to me, 8 and 9 years old, and they've heard the stories from their granddads. So saying, "You're Supersub, aren't you? You're Supersub." And you think, the story has been incredible for me. And we know Liverpool have had an incredible history and so many great players and characters. To think that I've got my little piece of it, I think is hugely satisfying. I'm proud of it now. There were times I didn't want to be pigeonholed as this guy that comes in, like in American sport, as the impact guy for the special moments. You want that place of your own. So I didn't want to be seen as a 15, 20-minute player. I wanted to be that the 90-minute player. That's how you used to categorize footballers. It's changed now. The word impact has become much more used in sport, and the people who are able to come in and influence the way a game is changed are pretty valuable in this day and age.
Well, if you wouldn't score so often when you came on,
yeah, that's right.
I might have actually got a six or eight games to show what I could really do, rather than sort of Bob Paisley identified that there was an opportunity to begin with 11, and when the team is the opposition is tiring, and even our team are tiring a little bit, sort of refresh, and in having not just somebody who came on just filled the hole and just sort of worked the same as everybody else, came on and could make maybe grab a goal, which was sometimes you think it's kind of easy to do that. I mean, maybe goal scorers kind of think that way, but it's the toughest thing to do in football is score the goals. So if you can come in, play 15 minutes and score a goal, then there's a role for you.
Hey David, I wanted to ask them. Obviously, growing up around Anfield and then making the team and being such a huge part of it, it has a lot of the locals love that, right? Everybody wants a Scouser in the team. And we see that now with Trent and Curtis Jones. I wanted to ask you just what your perspective is, because there's no reserve league anymore, right? So they're not getting the type of games that you guys got back when you were playing. I just want to see if you can give us some feedback on what you think about that.
Yeah, I think it was important for us to develop. There was a clear pathway set out. Going back to front, it was the B team, then it was the A team, then the reserves, and then the first team. These days, it's chopped and changed, whether it's under 17s, under 19s, under 21s, under 23s. Nobody knows, where you're up to. The reserves is called, I think, the under 23s now, and the competition isn't regular. Whereas, obviously, as I was making my way through, Roy Evans became the reserve team coach, and that was seen as that. You didn't get back into the first team if you were out injured from the first team until you played in a reserve team game, and players obviously who had that aspiration to break into the first team had to get into that reserve team, and that was difficult to get just into that reserve team as well. So the system. They've moved it around, and whether that this is kind of the PC world we tend to, live in or what, but reserve team football, I think they don't want to be putting kids who are 16 years old against guys who are 33 and 34 years old. 17s play with 17s, under 19s play with under 19s. 23s, so on. And then by then, 23, you can maybe come into the first team. We were like at 16. I was playing against, as an example, Michael Owen's dad, who was he was at Chester, and he would have been out of Chester's team. There's us, we're 16, 17, aspiring to break into Liverpool. And we're coming through, and we're now playing with these guys who are twice our age, hard professionals who knew the game. It was a great upbringing, because you learnt on your feet, and I think for the coach's point of view, they could identify which kids were, could sink or swim, could they play with the big fishes, and I think it was a much better, bound to say this, I suppose. I think the system worked quicker. I think you identified whether players could play, whether they had the right attitude. These days, I think there's a little bit of still. You see, we've had it over the last year or two. I mean, in recent weeks, KD Gordon coming in at that game at Norwich didn't look ready, but he's only been playing with 16 and 17-year-old kids. Yeah. And now he has to play with guys who are 25. Who've got families and all those type of things. So I think the system, it's kind of a quick example, but I think it kind of gives you an idea. The football that they create now doesn't prepare you to come into the Premier League as quick as what we did, because I made my debut at 18, and my first season I won a League Championships medal, I started in a UEFA Cup final at 18. So, I think the grounding that you got seemed to be much more fiercer, and it prepared you quicker and, stronger.
Yeah, I think it's only a couple of players, young players like Trent and obviously Harvey Elliott, that really do get the chance, because there's something about those two players. But I'm with you, because I even remember just playing Sunday League. I was 12 years old playing against 18-year-olds. Yeah. I was getting battered, but I wanted more. Yeah. I'd go back, and the next week I'd play against a bigger lad, but I'd make sure, I put my foot in there as well. But yeah, these days, it's like walking on eggshells with them. And then I think that's where there is a massive problem with a lot of kids don't make it to the next level. And then the mental health issue comes in, as we all heard about the Man City kid. Very, very horrible situation that. How is your take on how, like the FA prepares these kids these days?
Well, I think nothing's... There's a department for everything now. So, there's plenty of help out there for lads. I'm kind of stuck in the time warp a little bit, in as much as I think it's too easy to turn around and feel sorry for yourself that, maybe you're not getting the opportunity, or things aren't going right for you. You need to turn to somebody. That obviously, I didn't experience that, because in Liverpool it was very much an attitude. I've had this conversation as well with the guys over months and years. We talk about how you were knocked down at Liverpool, and the stronger ones got back up. The others, if you didn't get back up, they realised you ain't gonna come through, and you were just cast aside. And I'm still kind of a fan of that type of attitude. I don't want to feel as if you've got to mollycoddle everybody to, they've got to be treated mentally strong. I mean, we were, I wouldn't say the word abused, but if we didn't do a job properly, we didn't mop the floor properly, our bath wasn't clean good enough, never mind if we didn't pass the ball properly or we didn't do something on the... We were told there and then, and in front of everybody else. It wasn't a case of like taking aside and sort of saying, no, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And you were ridiculed in front of the others. It was a hard school. I don't think it did me any harm, to be honest with you. A lot of lessons I've taken with me right through my life. It's not to say I don't have, I have feelings for other people, that's for sure. My own kids as well. But it worked for me. I think it worked for me. And I think, as you say, you got Alexander-Arnold come through, Harvey Elliott has come through, who was clearly a very talented lad. I met his dad, who's a really nice guy. And you just get the impression that he's a gifted footballer. He's a gifted young guy, Harvey Elliott, and he'll be stronger for it, for having had the injury that he's had, that disappointment of having got into the first team, and it'd be taken away from him temporarily. I think he's something different, and I think he'd be one who'd come through any age. Some players you look at now and say, you've never got through in our time. I don't think you'd have got. I don't think you'd have got the chance. Alexander-Arnold has come through because he's a talented player. That, Beckham style, got great delivery of the ball and one thing or another. He can still pick holes in his actual general play, I think. But he's a great sort of deliverer of the pass. And if you can become a specialist at something like that, taking free kicks, taking corner kicks, even delivering crosses, there's a role for you today in modern football. Might have been different a few years ago, I think.
Hey, David, I wanted to ask you something that I remember a story now that in your book is about the 1966 World Cup there in England.
Yeah.
You won tickets to some games.
Yeah.
The final. But one of the stories that I was thinking about is when you were able to go see some of the Brazilian great players, right? And how did that influence how you went back to your little training on your street and how you're working the ball? What kind of impression did that leave on you as a kid to see those players?
It was a massive thing to win that competition and to have that opportunity to go and see. I mean, we were very lucky because the group that we had in Liverpool and Manchester was Brazil, Portugal, Hungary. It was a strong group, and to think that Pele was going to be playing. I know at Goodison, but in the city of Liverpool was a fantastic thing. He probably wasn't at the height of his powers that particular season, but seeing Pele and Garrincha and Eusebio was a huge star around that time. And we were more in touch probably with Eusebio because he was playing in Europe and Benfica. And what little football you saw on television, we saw Eusebio a little bit more than Pele, and he was probably the European sort of Pele. Pele was world number one. Eusebio was probably second best player in the world at that time. Mm-hmm. So I was really, really fortunate, and I mean, it's inspiring to go and watch those games. I went to see Eusebio scored 4 against North Korea in the quarterfinal game. Mm-hmm. It made a big impression on me. 66 stuff, and you try and learn how to bend the ball. And we went go to soccer clinics and stuff like that, but we learned how to be. You saw how Garrincha tried to swerve the ball with the outside of his foot. So we made games up in the street to recreate how we could maybe do that sort of talent. Anybody who grew up where I grew up, was where we had the gas pipes that fed into the house. Every house had one pipe, and we would try and sort of like move the ball either side of the gas pipe. And we weren't being shown it by ex-professionals or anything like that. We were picking it up from little images on television, go to watch football, reading in books and stuff like that, and we tried to recreate stuff. And I think that was a great part of growing up. By the time I was 10 years old, 9 years old, I could kick equally good with both feet, right foot, left foot. I had no favorites. I could bend the ball inside and outside with both feet, and that was just purely by playing in the street. Self-taught.
How many windows have you smashed?
Dear me. You know what? I can still remember the price around that, Darren. To you, it might have done well. You probably wouldn't mean anything to you, but 2 shillings and 11 pennies was generally the cost of a window to get replaced. And I broke my fair share. Thing is, we always stood our ground, and I was very lucky. The street I lived in. Don't know. I forged the kind of good relationship with most people. So the windows you broke never ran away and sort of like catch me if you can kind of story. It was hands up,
Well, in your book, you say you didn't run because you had to get your ball back.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I remember one story when the woman said the ball hit the window that hard, it ended up the other side of the room. Now the room was probably only about 12 feet long, but it's still in all. To us, she was trying to make a point that it was a good shot, and unfortunately, that house was the width of the street was about the width of a goal. So she just happened to be on sort of just inside the post kind of position. So they were quite vulnerable. So. I got plenty of memories. Yeah, I do have some fantastic memories of breaking windows with balls and things. And my mum still recalls bits and pieces how I broke one of her beautiful vases, a vase that she still misses 50, 60 years on. And I broke that playing with a tennis ball in in the house. So yeah, I mean, my life is scattered full of all these football stories when I was growing up. It was a fantastic time. That football was the be all and end all, and my mum still talks about the certain moments of my growing up.
Well, they didn't have double glazing back then either.
Exactly, that's a godsend probably. That would be a lot more expensive, yeah.
Yeah.
You put your windows in with a little bit of putty, so it was quite easy. You got your putty, and if anyone knows what putty is, but just like Play-Doh, isn't it? Windows just put in so simply.
Oh, believe me, I tried.
Yeah.
Before my dad came home. Yeah, it didn't work out too well.
I was never that lucky. I remember my dad coming home one night, and I'd been practicing right outside our house, and he came in, and then the front window put in. That wasn't an unfamiliar occurrence.
Sore bum.
No. That's the one thing. My parents were so tolerant. I wasn't never brought up in that sense. No, I was very fortunate. I have no memory of my dad ever shouting at me, to be honest with you. Never mind sort of threatening to hit me. It was, I had a great childhood.
My dad would just bring out the big belt and show me.
Bloody hell.
Never hit me, just showed me, because it was one of those, like, the 70s, like, wrapped rope belts.
Yeah.
And all right, Dad, whatever you say, I'll never do it again.
Yeah. No, there's plenty of stories, and plenty of kids will have had that unfortunate experience. But I was very fortunate. I had two great supporting parents.
Davey, we had the privilege to bring you to Austin in 2017 as part of our Legends Night. We had such a great time, just hearing your stories. But this city has changed so much in those 4 years, and we now have our own MLS team here that started the season.
Yes, yeah.
But so it just reminded me that you did play in the North American Soccer League for Toronto, for a short time, and the funny part about that is, I think Toronto is obviously very, very cold, and you were ready for that winter. But the way I think they had the numbering wasn't 1 through 12 like you're used to in England and in the States, and it was all over the place.
Yeah, I was 20. I was number 21 by the time I arrived. I signed for Toronto on April the 1st, 1982, and I had this impression. I got told when I was going to go to Toronto, so, you get into horse riding. I was thinking people are going to be riding around in horses and all that type of stuff. Not probably down the high street, but Toronto was a different place to that when I got there. It was snowing as well on that day. And I had a great time. I love Toronto. It could be so cold, and yet by a couple of months later, it was boiling hot. So it was a great experience for me to sample the NASL and see America, which I'd never seen before.
So, David, I'm going to ask you some favourites right now. What is one of your favourite goals that you've ever scored?
Well, most people probably, if you're aware of Liverpool history, link me to the Liverpool Saint Etienne game, which features a lot. My all-time favourite, I have to say, is scoring the winning goal against Everton in the derby in 1976. It kind of, the Saint Etienne goal was kind of how I, was a type of how I played, but the goal against Everton was very much how I played as a kid. That was all about me dribbling and going for goal, make my way to goal, and just it was about me and the ball. So that's, I have to say, that is really my personal favourite.
I mean, it's the Saint Etienne goal. It was absolutely brilliant because you started so far away from the goal. And you just put your head down. And that's what I read a lot of the ex-players say about you, that the other team really didn't know what you were going to do.
No, And then, obviously, down the years, people have sort of said, how did you score the goal against Saint-Etienne and all this type of stuff. Nothing can prepare you for those type of moments. And, I was with Jimmy Case last week, and he was asked about his goal he scored in the FA Cup final. The best things you do, probably, you don't think about. They're instinct. They're the things that all those days and times that you've practiced in the street or in the field on your own, that's what you have inside you. And that's what comes out when you need it most. The Saint-Etienne goal was take it on your chest, get it down then, and you just think, well, now I've got to. Once the ball's coming on the way down, now it's going to come to your right foot. So now you've got to control it with, and it needed to be controlled with the outside of my foot. Otherwise, if it controlled with my inside foot, would have taken the ball the other way. So all these things, kind of, you can look at it and describe what you did, but you don't have time to think why you do it. It's your that football brain kind of clicks in. So it's it's great that when these things come off, and I say, well, as you say, people didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know myself. Most of the time, it was pretty much all done on a wing and a prayer.
I love that you chose the Everton goal, just because as a Liverpool player, especially a Scouser, to score against Everton, just like when Origi scored, I would take that goal over anything, because it was the last second, and there's nothing better than beating Everton the last second of the game or scoring against them.
Yeah, I think I'd played in the street, I'd played in the schoolyard. It was always Evertonians that end, Liverpoolians this end. And how many times would I have done that in my life? And then to go and do the real thing. And strangely, I still get comments from Evertonians all these years later saying, I hate you for doing this, and I hate you for scoring that goal and everything. It's just that's just so pleasurable. It's just sort of like, it's just really, really proud moments. It's mad. Really,
they really are bitter, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they stored it all up, and we are. I know plenty of Liverpool fans who remember things, but Evertonians remember all the horrible things down the years. They just kind of, and then they get a moment, and it all comes out, and you just, oh my God, how sad you are. You've lived all your life with this sort of burning inside. We're fortunate to be Liverpoolians.
Just before we go as well, I always kind of like to ask ex-players like what they think your legacy, you would like your legacy to be.
Well, when I was growing up, Roger Hunt was my all-time hero, and I can remember goals that Roger scored to now, my age, and I spoke at Roger's funeral a few weeks ago, and I think that to think that I've carried those memories as long as I have done in my mind of Roger doing that. If one or two people remember Saint-Etienne and remember maybe Everton as long as I have. I'm sure I'll be very proud wherever I am at the time, and my kids will be very proud that people, remember their dad.
Can't get better than that.
Yeah.
On behalf of all the fans out there, and all the supporters clubs, we do so much appreciate the ambassador role that you've taken on, over the years, always being available to speak to people and share the love of Liverpool, the club, and the city. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, I thank Steve. It's no hardship. I was born a Red and will die a Red. You can only be what you are, and that's probably they're my mother's sentiments. So. It's great talking to so much of the world now who follow Liverpool. When we played, I don't think we were ever really aware of where sort of reports and images of us were appearing. Now, obviously, every moment of every game, even, stuff from trainings and all that type of stuff, people are watching this right throughout the world, every moment, of the day. I mean, it's great times to be a footballer, but, if people are still interested in our exploits of the past, then we're only happy to share.
As they should be,
Yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate to go to the Middle East, Far East, and the people, some of the fans we've met out there with all these books and clippings and things of story, that they've collated all down the years, the old scrapbook style. It's unbelievable. It's fantastic, and for them people to be so far away from Liverpool, it's easy for us to follow Liverpool. We're around the corner, but for people in corners of the world, whatever connects them with Liverpool, and then they have so much love tied up in it all. It never ceases to amaze us.
Well, on behalf of me and Steve, we really appreciate you coming on and spending a little bit of time with us today.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's great.
It was good to see you again, Dave.
Likewise, Steve. Cheers.
Cheers.